So you teach online and you've been having your students engage in group work. I want to applaud you. That is absolutely wonderful. But you've been thinking, how can I make the group experience even better? Well, I'm going to teach you a method called group processing that I guarantee will enhance the group experience for your students online. I'm Kelly Austin, your e-learning strategist who is passionate about helping you master the art of teaching online. So let's get started. All right, so you may be thinking, Kelly, what exactly do you mean by group processing? Well, group processing refers to how an organization works together to get things done. And so there are three things that are going to happen during this process. Your students are going to assess their productivity as a group. So each group in the course is going to take time to think about how well are we functioning. Then they're going to reflect on the entire group experience. When we talk about reflection, we're talking about deep thought about something. I actually wrote a definition down here from Merriam-Webster that says that a reflection is a thought, an idea, or an opinion formed, or a remark made as a result of meditation. But then Oxford Dictionary says that it's a serious thought or consideration. So ultimately, you want your students to think deeply and critically about the group experience. Thirdly, they're going to set goals, of which we'll talk about in just a moment. All right, so here are the tools that you're going to need for this process. You're going to need a reflector, which is actually a person. You're going to need a reflection form, and you're going to just need 10 minutes or less. 10 minutes or less. All right, so let's talk about this reflector. Now, if you've been watching the videos in this series, you know that I encourage you to have 5 group roles, and one of those roles is the reflector. So you're going to have a person in the group who's going to facilitate the reflection process. And the reflection process is what I'm going to refer to this group processing as for the remainder of this video. All right, so this reflecting that your students are going to do is comprised of 2 parts. Think quantitative and qualitative. So in one part, they're going to be reflecting, responding using numbers. And in another part, they're going to be reflecting, responding with conversation. Okay, so the first part of the reflection process is what I call the group performance rating scale. And in this process, the students are going to rate various aspects of the group experience. Okay, so here we go with the group performance rating scale. Now, I know you're like, wow, that's a lot on the screen, but I had to have this here with you because I'm going to demonstrate for you what happens. So in my courses, I have the reflector to access the reflection form. Okay. And so I prefer that they not pull it up on the screen, but I let them do as they wish, is their group. If they like it up on the screen, that's fine. But I've found over the years that not having it on the screen requires the group to actually listen to the statements without having the distraction of reading the statements, but they're listening and then they're responding. So your reflector is going to pull up the form and is going to let them know that they are to respond to the statements with 0 for major difficulty, 1 for needs improvement, 2 means that for good, 3 for very good, and 4 for excellent. Now, there's no talking during this process. What's going to happen is that the group members are going to respond in the chat box by just placing the number for the rating. Okay, so it goes like this. Are you ready? Okay, here we go. The reflector is going to say, all members of the group had microphones and used them effectively. And then the group members are just going to quickly, 1, 2, whatever they think. The reflector is going to say, okay, take an average of those responses, and they're going to code that here. So let's say the average of the if it was 5 people in the group, the average response equal 3. So that person will code that in. So the group members can't see all of that. And that's why I don't like for it to be up on the screen. They're just kind of, they might be doing it on their computer, or they might be making notes, on a piece of paper. All right, now let me say this, I forgot to say. These are items that I use for this particular course. You may choose different items for your course, and we're going to get into that just after we finish looking at this form. But I just wanted to demonstrate this for you first, so you have a frame of reference. All right, so next, the reflector is going to say, the chat box was used well to support the flow and dispensation of information. And everybody goes, blah, 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 whatever number they want to give, right? Okay. The whiteboard was used well to support the flow and dispensation of information. Now, as I'm reading these, I want you to think about what areas are being examined or being rated on when I'm reading these statements. Okay. So when I'm talking about, for example, when I'm talking about microphones being used and the chat box being used, those are technology oriented types of statements. Okay. So be thinking about that as I read these out. Okay. Number 4. Or did I read number 3? The whiteboard was used well to support the flow and dispensation of information. All members of the group were present and ready to begin the session at 6:30 p.m. That's when our session begins. Based upon the flow of the discussion, it was evident that everyone had read the assigned material and recorded their responses to steps 1, 4, and 5 before class began. Now, in this particular class, in step 1, they're doing presentations. Step 4, they're discussing a case study. And step 5, they're doing a quick assessment. It's like a little quiz that they do to kind of go over the content from a particular chapter. But yours, of course, would be totally different. The timekeeper did a great job making the group aware of time constraints. Everybody keys in their response. The group leader made sure that everyone equally participated and displayed effective leadership skills. Everybody puts in their honest opinion. Every step of the CLA was thoroughly executed. CLA in my class stands for Cooperative Learning Activity, so that's what that is. Group members were able to accept constructive criticism. Sometimes they can't, so they're going to rate that. Group members practice cooperative learning skills, helping and supporting each other, and allowing each member to feel like a valuable part of the team. They put that in there, okay? So that's the first part. If you have a question about this, put it in the comments below. All right, so then what happens is the reflector is going to add up. It says, take the average of the group's responses for each statement, add the ratings to obtain the final score, enter the total score here. So they get a score, a total score, and they're rated as such. Exceptional is 38 to 40 points. Skilled is 35 to 37. Proficient, 32 to 34. Developing is 29 to 31. Inadequate is 28 or less. Now, this score is not given to me for a grade. This is just for their own knowledge, for their own examination of themselves, and their own way to kind of see how they improve from the very first time that they meet to whenever the last time is, or each time that they meet. So it's just general information just for them to just kind of see, quantitatively what they scored. All right. So let's talk about your 10 question scale. Okay. I want you to think about cooperation and support. What kind of statements could you write? Maybe 2 or 3 statements about the students that answers the question, how well did the group get along? Like, what was the vibe? So you don't have to use the statements that I gave you. Think about your group experience, your course, what you expect of your students, and come up with questions that relate to cooperation and support. Then efficiency and flow. You want to write statements that are going to help them identify how well did the group move through the activity. Okay, so just a couple of statements about that. Then leadership. Remember, I had a statement about the group leader and the timekeeper. That's because they work together to make sure that the system that I teach you in previous videos has fluidly taken place, smoothly occurred, and that they stick to those time blocks or within the time frame enough so that they're able to accomplish their task. So you want to have some questions about leadership. How well were roles implemented? Those are the questions, the statements that you want to address. And then technology. Remember how I talked about the whiteboard and the microphones. And also, how well did the group utilize technology is the question that you want them to answer. But also, let me give you an example. Just last week in my summer school course, the students are working in groups, and these groups are voluntary because it's for summer school and it's for an asynchronous course. So they volunteered to be in the group. And so one young lady was about to share her presentation, but she was having an internet connection problem with the virtual classroom and collaborate. So I suggested to her that she just email it to another student. And that's what she did. And that student was able to pull it up on the screen, and she still was able to share her contribution to the group experience. So that's a way that they use technology well. It's also a way that they supported each other. Okay, so you want them to be thinking about all of that. And so you want to create statements that address these 4 areas. All right, so the second part of the reflection form is the discussion. The students are going to discuss 2 to 3 questions about the group experience. So this is our qualitative portion. All right, so what are these 2 to 3 questions? The first question that you're going to ask them to address is, what did the group do extremely well during the session? Be specific. Now, the reason why you begin with the group performance rating scale is because it triggers them to think more specifically about components of the group experience. If you started off with these questions at first, with the questions first, and do the rating scale, it's not going to be as rich as you would like it to be. Take it from me. I've been teaching for 16 years online and implementing groups for 13 of those 16 years. So you do the rating scale first so that it kind of gets them to think, okay, I'm thinking about when I'm talking about what we did well, let me think about the technology. Let me think about whether I was on time, whether I was using the chat box like I should have been, whether I was able to accept constructive criticism. So they can think about themselves as well as the whole group. And you will hear them when it says, what did the group do extremely well? They might say, well, I should have, I was late. Even though it's asking about the whole group, they will share about themselves. Those that feel convicted about it, they will say, I need to do better getting here on time, or, just from looking at you all's presentations, I want to make my presentations more engaging. Or they'll say, they'll make personal comments, and they'll also make comments about the group as a whole. Okay. And I was talking about extremely well, and I just told you a negative. So, scratch that. So let's get some examples of something they did extremely well. They might say, when a student was having a technical difficulty, we supported each other. We were very patient. We helped. I've had older students in the course that were not technologically savvy. And so some of the younger students will say, well, we helped Miss Anna figure out how to do such and such and such. So yeah, extremely well, Kelly, not what they did bad. We're going to get to that next. I gave it away. All right. The next question is, in what areas does the group need to improve? And that's where they might share their own personal issues, and also as well as the whole group. So we kind of cover that out of order. All right. So what's the third question? The third question that you might ask, which I don't always have this question there, because oftentimes when they answer the question about what they need to improve, they automatically do this. They'll say, okay, we need to be in class, be logged in at least 10 minutes before the session begins. Or they might say, we need to be a little bit more detailed when we're discussing the case study. Maybe I gave them some input. They might say, we need to be a little bit more detailed with the case study and take our time, and incorporate the concepts that we learned from the chapter, that kind of thing. So for setting goals, it says, what are 1 or 2 goals that we can set to improve our next session? So when they're talking about ways that they can improve, they kind of automatically state what they want to focus on or how they want to get better, but you can add this third question if you would like for them to be more explicit about one or two things that they want to focus on. All right. Next, you're going to have that reflection form stored on their neighborhood group page. Okay, so I talked about this in the previous videos in this series, that there should be a group page for each group. And in Blackboard, the group page has something called a file exchange. So I have the reflector to submit the reflection form to the file exchange. You may want them to put it on a wiki, or you may want them to put it on their discussion board, their group discussion board. So have them to store this, because over time they will begin to see how they improved. And also you're able to go in and look at the form and see how they rated themselves, and to see, this is a good thing. Let me say this. You want to see if they are good evaluators of themselves. Sometimes I have to talk to the groups. I make sure I go in there at the end. And if they're giving themselves a whole lot of 4s, I have to, put them, like if they say that everybody was on time and I know they weren't on time, or they say that the group leader, and the timekeeper kept them on task and I know they didn't do that. Or, if they just didn't do a good job of listening to each other or receiving that constructive criticism, I may have interjected at some point. And so I'm looking at how they rated themselves and they're just giving each other 4s. Oh, they'll do that in a heartbeat. And so you have to say, stop it. Let's really think about when we're evaluating our experience. I even had that on one of my reflection forms, that they are to be brutally honest in a respectful way, because that's the only way that you can get better. So when they store this data, if you're not, in there listening when they're going through the reflection process, because you may have multiple groups meeting at the same time, then you can go back to you can go to their group page and you can read this for yourself, and you might have some comments that you want to share with them. All right, so that's it. Let's review. You're going to need a reflector, a student who facilitates the reflection process. You're going to need a reflection form that has a two-part document that consists of a group performance rating scale and a discussion section. You need 10 minutes or less. That's the block of time that you need for not at the end of the group experience. And you're going to need storage on the group page, a place that you want them to upload the reflection form after every session. All right, so what would I like for you to do? I would love it if you would like the video or share a comment. And I definitely want you to subscribe to my channel at bit.ly, Kelly's channel. If you're right here on YouTube, you know what to do to press that subscribe button and that notification button. So every time my videos are published, you will be one of the first people to know. Lastly, I want you to watch this entire series. I did my very best to break down for you why it's important to infuse group activities, the 6 essential elements of a good, online work experience, and so much more. So if you look up to the left or to the right, you should see the playlist for this series on infusing group activities in your online college course. Now, until the next time we come together, I want you to create dynamic learning communities online, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.